kind of focusing on what I read the last half of March today. May, not March. It's June now, which means the last month we had was May. So now that we're clear on what month we're actually reviewing, let's get into it. So hi, my name is Talia. Thank you for being here today. Thank you if you are new to my channel. Thank you if you're a subscriber, wherever you are. I'm so glad that you are here hanging out with me talking about books today. Today we're going to be talking about 4 books that I read kind of to wrap up the end of May. I also read a couple other books that I covered pretty thoroughly in my Tulsa vlog, so I'll link that up above if you would like to check that out as well. But today, 4 books that I read during the end of May and kind of a couple trickled into June a little bit that I'll be wrapping up for you today. So first we're going to talk about Scythe. This book had been on my TBR for quite a while. I had heard it mentioned on quite a few other booktubers channels, and it just sounded so intriguing to me. Not a book I think I would normally pick up. So this is about a world where they have conquered death. If you get hurt, if you fall off a building, if you're run over by a truck, they just take you to this magical medical center and they revive you. You have like these nanites in your blood that immediately start healing you if you ever get any sort of ailment. You're pretty much immune to any type of disease. There is no way to die. So because of this, the population has gotten a little bit out of control. And even though there's modifications to help with this problem, there still needs to be some people that are gleaned, which means they are basically killed. So there are these people called Scythes that are in charge of choosing the people to be gleaned. And they use a whole bunch of different varieties of methods to do this. So this story follows 2 teenagers, Citra and Rowan, and they are chosen to become apprentices to be Scythes. Against their will, they do not really want to have this job, but just due to a variety of circumstances, this is what they become. They become apprentices, working under a current Scythe to help them learn how to have this very difficult job. And it kind of goes from there. It was so good. The booktubers didn't oversell it. It was really well written. All the characters are super easy to connect with. There's a couple different storylines going on at the same time, which I really like. It kind of jumps from different points of view. Kind of all starts tying together towards the end. I just thought it was really well done. I'm not sure, it ends kind of on a cliffhanger, like it kind of wraps up, but there's definitely another one in this series. And I'm not sure if I am going to like the way it's heading in the future. Like, I'm not sure, but I'm definitely going to read it to find out, because I give this one a 5-star. I thought it was just really well, intense. I just can't imagine like it was all about killing kind of, but it never was too graphic or too like, I don't know. I just felt like it was really well done. I don't know what else to say about it without spoiling the entire thing. But yeah, it had twists and turns. It was really a good read. So recommend that one for sure. The next book I read, I actually listened to on audiobook. I have 2 audiobooks. I was kind of plowing through them the end of this month. So the first audiobook I listened to was Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. This follows the true story of a man named Christopher McCandless, who in the early 1992 is when it all went down. But this young man graduated college, donated all of his savings to charity, and ended up just like taking a trek like across the United States, like burned all his money, abandoned his car at one point, just hitchhiked, and wanted to live like completely off the grid, completely independent from his family and everyone he had grown up with. So he ends up being found dead in 1992 in this bus in the remote place in Alaska. So it's really funny because when I'd heard great things about this book, but going into it, you're like, okay, this guy like donates everything, burns his money, goes randomly into the wilderness. He only had like a 10-pound bag of rice with him, and then he died. And you're like, well, obviously, like, what an idiot, you know? That was honestly kind of my first like reaction. I'm like, you know, this just sounds like kind of ridiculous. And that was kind of the response that a lot of people had immediately following his body being found, and it kind of made national news. Jon Krakauer wrote an article in, I think it was Outsider at that time, and he got a lot of like angry emails from angry people in Alaska saying this is just ridiculous that this happened, and he shouldn't even be getting any like recognition because he was stupid. However, reading this book, like, Jon Krakauer did such a good job. He goes through, he found like everyone. So Chris McCandless, he went by Alex in the story. That was kind of the name he gave for his wandering self. He goes around the United States for like 2 years. He journals most of his experiences, so we know a lot of like what was going on, what he was doing, what was going on in his mind during the time. He meets a bunch of different people, and Jon Krakauer did a great job of going and interviewing all these people that he met along his journeys around the United States. And you really get a feel for Chris's kind of character, and just kind of get a better understanding for why he did the things he did. I don't think anyone would say that he didn't make mistakes. Like, clearly he made some crucial errors, especially on his last venture into Alaska, and he could have prevented this death had he taken precautions that he should have taken, like having a map with him would have been super helpful. But it still was just so well researched. Jon Krakauer goes into kind of his experiences because he has climbed mountains and taken some pretty significant risks as well. So he kind of goes into his experience as well into that. And it just felt like it was really well written. It definitely made you have empathy for Chris McCandless, but also kind of think about like, oh man, like, what went wrong here? Like, how did this happen? And I don't know. It was really well done. That's a 5-star as well. And it's so funny because it made me want to know more. Like, I was wondering, like, because Jon Krakauer talks about going to the bus like a year after Chris McCandless's death. He actually takes his parents to the bus to kind of show them where their son was living, because he didn't have any contact with them for like 2 years. It was like he left and they didn't know what happened to him until they found the body a couple years later. So I got to thinking after I finished reading, I was like, well, where is this bus? Like, is it still there? And I did some research, and actually the bus until the year 2020 was still there. And a whole bunch of people like got like McCandless fever and wanted to go see this bus. And 2 people actually died trying to go visit the Chris McCandless bus. And a bunch of others, like I think it was like 15 or 20 others, had to be rescued trying to find this bus. So in 2020, they actually airlifted the bus out of there to stop people from trying to go find it. And it is at the University of Alaska Museum of the North now, and they are working on an exhibit currently. I think it's supposed to open sometime this year, where you can go and see the Chris McCandless bus without having to trek into the wilderness over dangerous rivers and risk getting stuck there and dying like he did. So I thought that was really neat too, because it's a part of history of that area now. This bus that he ended up being found in. So yeah, overall, I really liked it. I thought it was a really good read. Anyone who is just looking for a good piece of nonfiction to tug at your heartstrings a little bit, but also just kind of learn about a young man's adventure in the last years of his life, definitely recommend. It was really good. Next, I read the second book in the Nevermore series. So it was Wundersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow, I believe what it was called, by Jessica Townsend. This was the second book in the Nevermore series, and it is hard to chat about without giving spoilers on the first book, which I don't want to do. So basically, here's what I will say about this. It started off definitely feeling like a second book slump. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, the first book was so good and this book just isn't doing it for me. There was a lot of recap, which is good. sometimes to have a little bit of recap to kind of catch you up on what happened in the first story. But I felt like it was recap to the extreme. Like it was like very like, and now Morrigan thought about when this happened, and then this was this and this and this and this, and kind of like recapped in big chunks what happened in the first book. So I didn't love that. Also, I felt like it was very choppy. And you know, this was an audiobook, so I don't know if that's part of why it felt choppy, because I don't remember if the first book feeling as choppy, but I'm assuming it was similar writing styles. But I felt like it was a lot of like, Morrigan shrugged, Morrigan frowned, Hawthorne grinned. Like it was just a lot of like short, choppy little sentences there. I also did not like the audiobook. I felt like the characters' voices that she tried to use, some of them were just painful. Like it was like, there was one that she was like, "Vof," and I was just like, what is that? I can't even understand what you're saying. And then there's one point where like Morrigan is singing and she uses like the most screechy, terrible voice, and it happens like over and over, and I was just like, no, stop, I can't handle it. So I definitely don't recommend the audiobook. Like the first book I read, and if I read the third one, I will definitely be getting myself a nice paper copy of that, because I did not like that at all. That being said, about halfway through this book, I was like, oh man, I'm just not feeling this, but I kept pressing on, and I was so glad I did, because it got a lot better. The last half was really good. There were some twists and turns that started happening. It really made me kind of reconnect with Morrigan and what she was going through, and yeah, it got better. And again, I can't say too much more than that because spoilers, but I really enjoyed the last part of it. So it ended up being a 4-star, surprisingly, and maybe a little bit higher if I had maybe like 4.25 wouldn't have been audiobook. Maybe it's like 3.5 because of the audiobook aspect, but we'll give it a 4. We'll give it a 4 for now and call it a day. So we'll see. I don't feel super, I don't feel like I need to pick up the third book right away. I can like give it a little break, but I am curious to see what happens with Morrigan in the future. So I'm sure that will be read at some point in time. So last, I read my very first book from NetGalley. So NetGalley is a website where you can go and sign up to receive advanced copies of books that are not yet out to review. So I read a book called Nora and the Sacred Stones by Nora Rupper. And it's actually really interesting because after I read this book and went on to review, I realized that it was already released last year. So I'm not sure why it was still on there. But I read it and I'm gonna review it anyways because I was really excited to get to get a copy of it, even though it's not technically advanced. And I have 2 other books I'm reading for June that I got advanced copies of from NetGalley, and I checked and they actually are advanced copies. So I'm not sure what happened there. If you know anything about why NetGalley still has books that are already released, let me know. But anyway, I read Nora and the Sacred Stones by Nora Rupper, and it was such a delightful read. So we have Nora, and she has this magical power where she can pull magic from stones. So this world that she's living in has all these different types of stones, and when you pull like magic out of them, they can do different things. So it starts with her breaking into this royal castle to try to get magic out of one of their stones in order to cure her sister, who has had this medical condition since birth. And she's with her brother and her brother's friend, and she ends up coming upon like the prince in the castle, who's like the bad guy, and then she's trying to escape and get this magical potion that she makes from this rock called a Revar, probably Revar is how it's pronounced, home to her sister. So it kind of follows that journey. And this was such a cute middle grade fantasy story. I really liked it. I felt like it was just, you just love the character. You get the point of view from the prince guy who's trying to catch her at one point, and you kind of bond with his character too. And I felt like it was really well done. So the one thing I will say about this book is I felt like it was pretty short. Like probably a couple hours max to read it, maybe not even that long. And I feel like it could have expanded so much more. I'm all for getting to the point in books and not rambling for long periods of time and taking all these tangents that don't affect the story whatsoever, but I felt like really a little bit more depth could have been developed into this book. It's middle grade fiction, so I understand that they keep them a little bit shorter, but I felt still that it could have been expanded a little bit, and it would have been even more enjoyable because I really did enjoy reading it. I thought the ending was cute. It definitely leaves room for another to be written. I think they could definitely write another one, and I would be willing to read it. So that was a solid 4-star for me as well. So a really good reading month for me, because I think the 2 books I read at the beginning of May were both 5-star, either one 5-star and one 4-star. I can't exactly remember, but there was no stinkers in the bunch this month. There was no DNFs, nothing that I was like, oh, I really don't want to pick this up. Like, it was awesome all around. So I'm super happy about that. It was fun. I've already started a couple of my June books, which are going well also. So I'm really excited. I have good feelings, you guys. Summer is just going to be an awesome time of reading and hanging out in the sun and playing with my kids, and it's just going to be great. So I hope you are doing great wherever you are. I hope you take some time today to relax and read a good book or two. And if you are having a bad hair day, just wear a bandana. Bye.